Hey guys, Nick here with AKS and the FRS crew. So today we're gonna bring you a open format and talk a bit about back pain.
So a common thing, James, I have is I have people come in to see me for back pain and they think they've injured their back, but on talking to them, they've really just been sick and in bed for a week. And so I want to kind of get the message out there that lying around in bed or just staying stagnant in bed for a week is really the cause of the back pain. There's no injury there per se. It's just a reaction to a lot of core dysfunction that develops from being in bed all week.
Right. And I think if you already have a pre-existing condition, that's going to exacerbate it.
Like, yeah, right. You've got like one hip that tends to be a little stiff. Right?
Yeah, right. Or just short hamstrings. Like the majority of the population can't touch their toes.
Right.
If you can't touch your toes, the extended periods in bed is going to give you back pain, without a doubt. Right. So I think that it's probably a combination of people just not being functionally sound with their physical lives. Right. Shortness. In the hamstrings, right? And the body contracts when you go to bed, meaning that the fascial lines shorten, right? And a lot of people sleep on their side in the fetal position, and that will shorten your hamstrings and shorten your hip flexors, right? For an extended period of time. Which probably shouldn't be much of an issue if you lived a functional life. But if you spend all day sitting, then right. You've got shortened hamstrings and shortened hip flexors. You're just reinforcing the sitting pattern when you go to bed and sleep in the fetal position, right?
Yeah.
So with that, growing up, I always heard that sleeping on your stomach was bad. Because it was bad for your back. I guess you're doing the same thing in reverse there.
If you're sleeping on your back, you mean?
On your stomach.
Yeah, so...
And I think that advice is turned around. I think they're okay with it now these days. Yeah. They think it's okay.
Well, so here's what I'm to understand. If you have no functional issues at all, like no which most people don't, apparently sleeping on your stomach isn't all that challenging for somebody. But they've done studies, and people who sleep on their stomach and let their feet hang off the end of the mattress actually get a better night's rest than people who sleep with their feet on the mattress. And I think what that does is forces your hips into an anterior tilt. Right?
With your toes going down instead of trying to compensate.
Well, if your toes are hanging off the edge of the mattress,
right,
then your legs are flat. But if they're on top of the mattress, then they either turn out or your hips going into an anterior tilt, and it shortens all the lumbar musculature, right? But little kids sleep on their bellies all the time, and from what I've seen, little girls do it more than little boys. I don't know that's just a random statistic coming from my own observations, right? But I've seen a lot of kids sleep on their stomachs and they're okay with it. But their bodies are pliable, right. They're bendy, they're like little Gumbies. As we get older and our low backs stiffen up, I think laying on your stomach is way less of an option.
Yeah.
Or on your back. Right? Like I can't sleep on my back for very long. I'm good for maybe an hour and then I got to go to my side, right? Yeah. And that's what I do all night long.
Mm-hmm. Right? I've got a sleep apnea that wakes me up. Like I can't. I will wake up every 5 minutes going,
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it actually literally, I didn't understand it for years. I because when I was on like long road trips and I tried to sleep in my car, I was like, man, I'm exhausted. Why can't I sleep in my car? And I realized I was lying on my back, and every 5 minutes or so, I was doing that, and it was waking me up.
What causes sleep apnea?
Oh God,
is that a discussion for another day?
Well, I mean, it's
where I'm going with it is it can affect the back and the back pain.
Oh, sure. I think that can affect it too.
So
Absolutely.
I think that when
Because,
your
yeah.
core pulses when you do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It does a severe. Well, I mean, you got all kinds of intercostal muscles. I'm sure it's a big contributor to. I mean, I don't know this scientifically, but I am sure it's a contributor to neck pain because when you do that big, right, all these scalenes and everything, right, try to lift the rib cage and try to get you to breathe all of a sudden.
I always thought sleep apnea was attributed to being overweight.
Oh, yeah, it is, but it's not. A lot of overweight people have sleep apnea, but not all people who have sleep apnea are overweight. It's actually, I thought it was, well, now we're going to get into a little too much speculation, but I thought it was a fairly common thing in Japan, actually.
Sleep apnea.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
I don't know. But anyways, that's not a hugely obese population.
Interesting.
So, but in James Nestor's book, right? You haven't read all of it, I don't think, but you'd read part of it, and he had started to talk part of it about being possibly the musculature becoming weak because of the soft foods,
Or the smaller jaw. He talked about it. I read that part. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not.
And then
I'm not
a lot of
fully convinced.
orthodontic work, like it became a big thing when I was growing up. Orthodontic is to like pull out, I think molars on top and bottom, and bring the whole front of the mouth back.
Really?
Less room for the tongue, so where does the tongue go? Tongue goes back. And I was on the table to get 4 teeth pulled to have that whole thing done. And because the orthodontist had told my dentist to do it. And right before they put the mask on me to put me under, my dad looked at the dentist and he said, "Man, do you think this is necessary?" And he said, "You know what, Dean, I don't really think so." And they didn't do it.
Jeez.
Those are your wisdom teeth?
No, they weren't my wisdom teeth. Just regular molars
Really?
here. They were going to pull out regular molars and bring the whole bite back.
Weird.
And now I talked to a sleep specialist, and he said, "Man, if they'd done that, there would be no room for your tongue. Your tongue would be pushed further back. I think it could be all kinds of sleep apnea problems." So.
Yeah. According to James Nestor, eating softer foods is why our jaws are shrunk and we have to pull our teeth out, right? Or our,
The wisdom teeth, yeah.
Yeah, because back when we were hunter-gatherers, our teeth weren't just used for, I mean, they were used as tools as well, right? And so our jaws were more robust, right? And we were eating way more. Like today, our foods are softer, right? Yeah, they're eating tougher foods and gristle, and right now we're eating grains and oatmeal and shit like that.
Oatmeal, right.
And so I think our jaws have gotten smaller, and that's why they're pulling our wisdom teeth out. And as a result, sleep apnea has become a bit of an epidemic. That's his theory. I'm not fully sold on that one yet, but it's a good theory. It's not that I don't believe it. Right. But
yeah.
So let's go back to the back pain. So one of the things that I've always found interesting with back pain is people in their 30s, 35, say that they threw their back out.
Yes.
How
do you throw your back out at 30 or 35 years old?
Because, I think people mostly say that because it's accumulation of bad movement. So just improper movement or just bad movement patterns over time, but it happens in all of a sudden. They're like, "Oh, I was just bending over and like everything seized up in that moment. Like I shouldn't have done that thing." It's like, no, it was coming. It was going to come some way. It just feels like all of a sudden you threw your back out picking your kid up.
Yeah, think of synergistic dominance, right? Hamstrings are loaded, calves are loaded. You've got general tightness, and you bend over. You also got a timing issue, so the muscles are not recruiting in the correct order, and you've already got compensations. Because the hamstrings are so long, there's room for them to play, but all the muscles in the back they're small, right? And so it's the back muscles that are going to go out. There's nowhere for them to go, right? Like the multifidi, they go from vertebrae to vertebrae to vertebrae. And so basically what happens when your back seizes up, it is usually synergistic synergistic dominance, right? And sometimes the back pain can be local in the back where it seizes up, and sometimes it can be in the hamstrings where the hamstring seize up, but the pain is reflected in the back. And being able to make the distinction between localized back pain and back pain coming out of the posterior chain and other places.
And so almost all the times when I hear this, they always refer to like a chiropractor to readjust them and put them back. But doesn't it go into a deeper thing of like they need to have structure?
Yeah.
They need to have function, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just about manipulating the joint back in
Right.
place. That will help.
It
That
will
will
help.
help proprioceptively, right? But rarely does it solve the whole problem. We found that we can solve the whole problem better by working on the muscles.
It's very rare that I hear somebody say, "Oh, I threw my back out," and it's only happened once.
Right. Yeah.
It's always
A chronic issue.
a chronic issue. Oh, I threw my back out again. Oh, this happened again. And it just baffles me to how people just put off that it's just something that their body does rather than something that they want to fix.
Right. It's a
Yeah,
little
I think
mysterious.
it's kind of our conditioning, if you think about it. Like a person learns as a kid, right? If you don't tie your shoes, you're gonna trip. So we always tie our shoes. But we don't learn as kids how to take care of our bodies, and so, right, it's the same thing. We're tripping. Right? We're not tying our shoes and we're tripping, right? And so we're not teaching kids at a young age how to manage their physicality, if you will. And we see it, man. Like they should have kids squatting and getting up, right? Those are two big patterns we talk about a lot, right?
Yeah.
Squatting, getting up, lunging, crawling, right? We put them in desks all day long, and then we give them a 15-minute break and a half-hour lunch to go run.
Right.
After they've been sitting all
Or they
that
eat a
time.
ton of sugar.
And they eat a ton of sugar, right?
Right. So they're primed for, to go move for 2 hours nonstop.
Yeah. And we're bombarding kids with information and material that's probably good for life, but we're not bombarding them with information material that's good for their physical life. Kids aren't leaving school knowing jack shit about taking care of their bodies.
Right.
Right?
Right. But so but when people get injured, a lot of times, look, a lot of people are fairly educated on how things go wrong in the medical system. So they're like, man, I've got back pain. Well, why am I going to go to my doctor? My doctor's not going to do anything for me. He's going to give me anti-inflammatories and, maybe tell me to ice it and put some heat on it. And it's like, that's all you're going to get. So why even bother going to the doctor, right? So it's like, well, maybe I'll go to a physical therapist. Well, if they've been to a physical therapist, it's been a crapshoot as to whether they were with a physical therapist that would put their hands on them, do some good myofascial work and get them out of pain, or were they with a physical therapist that would just prescribe them exercise and be like, this will help in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Right? So when they look at those options, if they're aware of all those options, most people are aware of the doctor option and they're like, well, I'm not going to get shit there.
Yeah.
So then if they're aware of the physical therapy option, if they're lucky enough to have been to a really good physical therapist, they'll go to that. But if they don't, if they're exposed to the more useless physical therapy, that just prescribes exercise, they're like, well, that's not worth it either. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to grin and bear it. I'm just going to go through it. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing with FRS, is just to get people a solid option of look, we've dealt with so much back pain, the common back pain. We're not talking about, you're in a car wreck, but James has plenty of experience with that. But we're talking about the average Joe that just pulls their back out. We got a lot of options for that, and we're trying to get the word out. We can take care of that. That doesn't scare us at all. That we've got good solutions for that.
Right.
And people just don't have that. So people just give up. And Greg Cook spoke to that. He said, we kind of shame obesity a lot in this country instead of going at it more from how did people get there, right? And a lot of people got there because, okay, there's shitty food in the system. So they gained some weight, then they said, okay, well, man, I want to go exercise, right? So they went and exercised, but they hadn't exercised in so long. They had bad movement patterns. Then they went and got injured, and now exercise hurts, right?
Right.
So, and that's so common. So,
Yep.
you know, it isn't a good idea to go out there and shame people and be like, well, you just got to eat less. And like, well, you're going to have to deal with what you eat, yes, but you should have somebody that is competent in getting you re-educated in how to move in a gradual way where you don't get injured.
Right.
The overweightness is almost like the homeless thing. There's so many different aspects of it that
Right.
have gone wrong that where do you start to correct
Exactly.
it? And a lot of it, I believe, is an education thing.
Yes.
There's so much bad information out there that's been out there forever. You know, the food pyramids and everything. It's just been completely debunked, and what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, and everybody's different. But
Yet they're still using the food pyramid.
Yeah.
but that's a different thing. But when it comes to like kids, right? When I see like a 7-year-old come in for classes and they're obesely overweight, you know, using the medical side of it, you know, way past the BMI overweight.
Right.
You know, it's tough because we can correct it at that stage, especially if they come in, you know, working with the parents and getting the exercise and everything in. But a big part of it is education, and a lot of it comes from the parents not having the discipline or the education, and then it gets passed on to the kids, like so many other traumas and things that happen.
Totally.
And I feel bad for the kids that don't get the help or the parents don't seek out the help, because there's things that are irreversible. With being obese and going into your teens and then into your adulthood, skin things, you know, you see people lose a bunch of weight afterwards, but they're never going to have the body that they could have. And it wasn't really self-inflicted as a kid.
No.
This is what they were, you know, provided. And don't feel bad as parents if you're there. Figure it out, right? Go see a doctor, get on a diet plan, get the exercise going. The sooner you can get your child living a fit, healthy lifestyle, they're going to carry that through their entire life. Or you can keep them on the path and they're going to struggle with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We have to sort of consider the conditions, right? So when I was a kid, we didn't have social media, we didn't have phones. I think we had 3 television stations, right? And we weren't allowed to watch TV until after dinner. And so we either did our homework or we were kicked out the front door. And we're not seeing that. The other thing too is, you know, both parents are working. So there's no guidance for the child, right? They're feeding themselves very often, or the oldest sibling is feeding the others. And I know it happened when my siblings fed me. We were eating Captain Crunch every chance.
Right.
Oh, man. That's what you do when you're a kid. You're like, I can eat this nice, healthy chicken sandwich, or I can eat a bowl of Captain Crunch. Every kid's going to go for the Captain Crunch, right? If you don't have parents at home, that's what's going to happen. And if you don't have parents at home to kick them out of the house, they're going to plop in front of the television. Right? We did the same thing, man. If we came home and the folks weren't there, right, it was Captain Crunch and cartoons. Right?
Absolutely.
And that was like, ooh, that was kind of cool, right?
Right.
We always had someone looking out for the parents, and we had to scramble out the back door and turn off the television. They'd come in, touch the television, it's hot, and we were busted anyway. They're like, hey, where's all the cereal? We're like, what? What are you talking about? Right? So, you know, we were little sugar addicts and liars, right? Okay. And so I think understanding that the systemic issue, right? So the schools are not teaching functional movement and functional care. I don't think they truly understand diet and nutrition, right? And then we have 2 parents working, children tending to themselves, right?
So look, I mean, so we, you know, it becomes a rabbit hole. Like you can start to see all of these different causes. So
like
I honestly, so like you have to start paring. You have to start paring it down.
Paring it down.
I'm
a huge fan of paring it down.
Yeah,
right.
You have to start paring it down.
Yeah.
Because people come in, to me, they got multiple things going on. And so And you can look in a hospital admission, like, right? Because I worked in the hospital field, like a hospital admission, the questionnaires, if any of you have ever had it, like it can take them up to an hour to go through this questionnaire.
Yeah.
They learn all about your history and whatever, right? I don't have that kind of time. I don't think it's completely necessary, right? It to really do effective work, okay? So let's just, it's a human being. A human being, number one, usually needs to sleep, and they need to sleep well. And that's, I mean, that's starting to become a pretty popular thing, like through the Huberman Lab and things like that. Like all this research at Stanford and everything, it's like sleep is the baseline of everything. If you fuck up your sleep, you're gonna have terrible cravings. You will have these stress cravings for high calorie foods and all these different things. So if you baseline get your sleep straightened out, you can start to control a lot of other things that you might not be able to. Now, there are plenty of people that have learned to work past bad sleep, because you know, if you're a CEO that works 75 hours, you know how to thrive even on little sleep. But we're talking about the average Joe here. Try to straighten out your sleep first and foremost. Straighten out your sleep. Move.
Yeah.
You know, and people are like, oh well, what do I do with movement wise? Well, it's kind of like you said, when we have the most debilitated people that come in and we don't know what the hell to do, but we're not going to send them off to a doctor because we know there's not some complicated medical problem going on. They're just so debilitated. So what do? Put them on the floor, get back up. You know,
over, get up.
And if you do that, like if you do just that, like, you know, tell them like that's all the different things, all these different things you're going to hit along from the floor to get up. Like you're going to get through some of your mobility issues. You won't get through all of them, but you're going to get through a lot of them eventually. And
you'll create a baseline of stability and strength in which now the body has a place to take purchase, so you can move them forward into a cleaner program, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that just came to me. You had mentioned sleep is the key to everything, and he's talking about the homeless problem being systemic. Those fuckers don't sleep. They're all tweakers.
Right.
So, I mean,
and a large portion of them.
A large portion of it.
Yeah, but if you don't sleep because you're under high stress, right?
High stress,
under
a lot of drugs
for an extended period of time, like your mind's gonna go all
you lose your ability to live a functional life.
It's just like the mouse study that they did with cocaine, right? The happy mouse with other mice and everything with a big cage hardly ever touched the cocaine water. So they put, if you're not familiar with it, they put 2 water bottles. One of them had a bunch of cocaine in it. The other one was just pure water. The mouse that was in the cage that didn't have any toys, didn't have any other social, it always went to that cocaine until it died. Whereas they put a bunch of mice in a cage that was bigger, lots of activities and wheels and everything in there. They would touch the cocaine just socially. Like they would touch it and then go have fun, and then they wouldn't touch it for like a week, and they would just go back to the regular water. So the depressed mouse kept hitting it. So if we look at the homeless situation, you know, do we go, they're homeless because they were tweaking, or are they tweaking because they're homeless?
Right. Chicken or egg thing.
Yeah, it could be both. Right?
It could be both. Yeah, it's a social issue for, like, definitely. Like, I mean, people who get hooked on drugs very often, it's because they have a miserable life already, right?
Something's going on,
and something's going on. But then you get the lack of sleep, and then dysfunction, and so on. So there's
compounded.
Yeah.
Right, and so bring it back. It's like, so when people come to me with really complicated problems, like, well, how are you sleeping? And I guess one guy I have who basically, you know, shuffles and refuses to go to a doctor. He was raised, his mom was a Christian Scientist. He's not a Christian Scientist, but he kind of just held on to that doctors are pretty useless. And a lot of times they are, honestly, right? So he refuses to go to a doctor and get a hip transplant. That's what he says. Like, I'm not going to get a hip transplant, a hip replacement, right? But he's so unfamiliar with the medical lingo. It's funny. And so he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, well, okay, that's your choice. Like, you're pretty debilitated. So, well, what are our options here? Like, if you want to live a functional life, you got to be able to get up and down off the ground. So, you know, in the morning, he spends a half an hour in bed doing some movement in the morning so he can move. And then I'm like, man, you got to be able to get up and down off the ground. Like, he sleeps okay, which is great. So he's got that baseline. Now I'm like, hey, if you want to live a better life, get the ability to get up and down off the ground.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
you know, at his age, he's 80 something. But it's like, hey, if you're going to refuse medical care, like, I'm just going to give you your best option after that. So there you go. Like,
Yep.
because he could get a hip replacement, and hip replacement would help him. But so there it is. Like, super complicated. You got to make it simple.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Paring it down. I got one of those too. I got a guy right now that refuses to get his hip replaced. Well, we'll raise hell with it. But,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, very often you can prevent that hip replacement. Sometimes you can't,
Right.
right? But more often than not, or more often than you would think, you can prevent a hip. I've done it.
Yeah.
Right? And where doctors would say, there's no way, you got to get that hip replaced.
Right.
So all things said, basically refining it: eat good, sleep good, and move.
Yeah, move.
But where we started was with sickness. If you're in bed for a week,
Yeah.
don't just stay in bed for a week. You know, if you just have your standard stomach flu, norovirus, or, you know, some kind of rhinovirus, some kind of respiratory, and like, you're not going to die getting out of bed, right? And this is excluded, like, when you get to, you know, be 70, 80 or whatever, right? That's a little bit different. There's risk of falling. But if you're below that, you have no reason to be in bed 10 hours a day. It's not even a good idea, and that's why your back is hurting later. That is why your back is hurting. So if you're in that position and you're too dizzy to get up, then fucking crawl around your bed, right? Or roll around your bed, because I guarantee you're going to have less back pain at the end. You're going to have less joint pain at the end. Some of the back pain will come out of the inflammation and that your body's immune system working. That's some of it. But some of it is just simply a core dysfunction from not breathing properly. And it's really important, because I also see that very common with chemo patients. Chemo patients, they get a dose of chemo, and for the next week, they feel like shit. They feel like absolute shit.
Yeah.
And then they have terrible back pain. This was very early on when I just started working with you and you just started training me. I had a woman come to me who was on chemo. It was a friend of my girlfriend. And she went into the chemo office to get her round of chemo, and she said, you know, I can't lift my leg when I'm sitting anymore. I can't lift my leg. She was sitting like this, and she's like, I can't lift my leg up anymore. And they're like, oh my God, you've got some kind of terrible nerve impingement or something like that. They sent her right over to the ER. She got a CAT scan, and she got this full medical evaluation. And at the end, they're like, nothing's wrong. And they sent her home. But she still couldn't lift her legs normally anymore. And she came to me, and I started just asking the questions like, what's been going on? And she's like, well, I've got cancer, and I've been going through chemo. And just from knowing what I do medically, I'm like, okay, you went through chemo. When was your last round of chemo? Well, it was a couple of weeks ago. What'd you do after that? Well, I was in bed for a week. I said, okay, well, there you go. You were breathing dysfunctionally for that week. Your core muscles start to act funny. You lose the ability to lift your legs the way you normally would. And so I just did a little bit of work on the legs. I did a little work on just in the psoas and whatnot. It just woke those things up. You know, 10 minutes later, she could lift her legs. Everything was fine.
Very often, the way you approach those things too is important, and that's a perfect example. Let me give you an example. You guys, I just had a tooth pulled, and it got infected. Mm-hmm. The socket got infected. And I went in to see the dentist, and the first thing he asked me, he says, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. You pulled my tooth and it got infected. What did you do? And he got the point right there. And that discussion was over, right? Like, you don't blame your clients if they're not the professional, right? I don't do it. If I work on a client and they're out of pain and they come back in and they're hurting again, I don't say, what did you do? Mm-hmm. I say, what do you think happened? Yeah. Or what should we do to move forward, right? But putting it on them is not a cool move.
Right.
And as soon as the dentist said to me, what did you do? I was like, I didn't do anything. You pulled the tooth. What did you do? He got the message. That discussion was over.
Right.
Right. The blame game doesn't work in pain.
Right.
Right.
Because the person's in need.
Results.
Yeah.
Let's get to work and get it done and not blame. And
And you
don't
can have,
worry
you
about.
can have a discussion afterwards, right?
Yeah, I think that with medical professionals, everybody's worried about protecting their reputation or things like that.
Liability.
Own that shit, man. Right? And don't put it on the person. Right? I don't do it. Right? Now, I may call out a client for being lazy.
Right.
Right, dude, we have a plan here, and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Right? That's different. Accountability, but it's not a blame game.
It'd be better if it was a partnership rather
it's a
than,
problem
than
solving.
having this person standing over the other person and being
Yeah,
like,
you don't
what
want-
did you do? Like, okay, like, hey, let's figure it out together.
Yeah, you don't want
know?
to lord over your clientele, right? That doesn't help anybody.
Because they're usually coming to you in need.
They're coming to you in need, and so you've got to show empathy and understanding. And look, we're professionals. It all makes sense to us.
Right.
Right? But to them, they're lost in the, right? They're lost in it. And so, the blame game doesn't work in that whole, anyways, I think that, sitting down and working it out with them. The other thing is that very often people go see a doctor and the doctor says, yeah, nothing's wrong.
Right.
And they let you go.
But
Like that shit doesn't happen in my office.
Right.
Right?
Well, that's the whole reason that me and you connected is my knee. There was a nerve issue and it would just collapse on me.
Right.
So I'd be in the middle of kickboxing and I'd set my foot down and all of a sudden I dropped to my knee. Went and got the X-rays and the doctors did like the push and pulls to make sure everything was tight and everything's good. Okay, have a nice day. And I'm like, it's still happening, and this has been going on for months. And then I come into you, and you strip it out in one session, and good to go.
Done deal. Yeah, right. And I think that's huge. Sometimes going to the doctors, you got to fill out paperwork, you got to answer questions. It's even a business practice to charge more for the first visit, right? Double the amount of all the other visits. The first visit's very often twice as much. And it's because you're spending more time there, but you're spending time alone, filling out paperwork alone. It's a bit of a business scam, right? I get it, man. I throw them right on the table. Let's get right to work, right? So, but I know other business practitioners that do what we do, that do the same thing.
Yeah.
Come on in. I'm going to charge you $350 for the first visit. You're going to fill out this paperwork. We're going to talk. And I'll put my hands on you next time.
Right.
That's a bullshit model, and I know a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
I just don't respect it.
With Affinity Kickboxing, it's the same thing. We don't charge sign-up fees or anything like that. You pay your monthly fee, unlimited classes. You hop in, you're going that day.
Right to work, man.
Yeah. Why charge somebody $250 to say yes, I want to do this, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. So you got your $250, and then now they're paying for the actual service that you're providing. What was the $250 for?
Yeah. Well, we saw
it just becomes an industry standard, and it's like, oh, we do it because they do it.
Right.
Drop the sign-up fees, drop the cancellation fees.
Yeah. And we've seen it with other martial arts schools. We won't say the name, but they gouge you for a gi, they gouge you for sign-up fees, they gouge you, right? And then they send the bucket around in the middle of class. That's bullshit. That's the quickest way you're going to lose me as a student.
You have to wear their particular stuff, and everything's overinflated by 50 to 100%.
Yeah. And we're actually talking about a particular martial arts school.
There's a lot of them, though.
But there's a lot of them that do it, and it's just dishonest. It's a money-making system. I think a lot of guys come over to the United States from other countries, open up schools, and they just think, oh, these guys are loaded. They can afford anything.
But just keep good business practices.
Good business practices.
Whether it's fixing bodies or martial arts or doctors, right? Provide the service to your people, and they'll hang around.
Yeah, honesty goes a really long way.
It does go a long way.
Honesty and empathy.
Empathy
right?
is
I've
huge.
I've definitely had people that with really, really bad problems that nobody's getting good answers on, and maybe I'm not even making the progress I necessarily want to make, but I've had them look at me and be like, you know what? I know we're not getting the best results, but I can tell you care.
And you're
You know,
trying,
I'm
right?
invested.
Yeah.
You know.
Without a doubt.
It's huge. They say the best business works on 80% give and 20% take.
Yeah.
And that take is more of a reciprocation
Right.
rather than a take. So
Right.
they say that you shouldn't be 100% give because then you're devaluing yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
You're being too giving. And we do have
Martyrdom,
businesses to
yeah.
run. We have families to support. So we do need to provide. And so that reciprocation does. But I'm going to give you 120% for every 100% you give me, right?
Right.
Just explode with value.
Yeah. Exactly.
And, quality. And then the way that it comes back is that when I first started and stuff, our rates were cheaper and all that. We started in a 1-car garage. We had 3 people. We started to outgrow that, and then we moved into another location, and then we moved into a bigger location and a bigger location. And the only reason I was able to do that is I was putting 100% of the profits and everything that I was making from the current members back into it. So the members were directly seeing, we're getting new mats, we're getting bigger studios, we're getting
Right,
new bags, we're getting more classes, we're getting all these features. And it went that way until, it was the size of this. And I still work really hard in just constantly adding value and making that membership really, because martial arts and certain things aren't cheap per se, but I would still be stuck in my 1-car garage training 3 people if I hadn't charged a rate where we could grow. And now I've affected thousands of lives, right?
Right.
I could have helped 3 people and done that whole, martial arts is for everyone and martial arts is, designed to give back and everything. Well, I would have only touched 3 lives. And the amount of transformations and stuff that I've seen and people living healthy lives and really getting after it now, just based on charging a fair value, charge that fair value, guys, and then just over deliver, and make it worth it, obviously. But that way you can affect so many more people. And the thing is, they're going to be doing that with somebody. So they're either giving you that money or they're giving you somebody else that money. Mm-hmm. And you're the only one who knows that you're going to provide that service and you're going to exceed expectations. The other person that they give that money to might not.
Right.
So if you're the one gathering that business and you're the one doing the right things, it's a win-win.
Right.
It totally is. Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing in the therapeutic world, Yeah.
In everything. That's how life goes.
You're right. In
Even
everything.
if there's not a monetary value, if you're out there helping people, don't let yourself get stepped on. But if you're out there helping people, you're going to feel better. You're going to put that out there.
Yeah.
More opportunities are going to arise.
Yeah.
Just be a good person.
There's a very well-known class, probably at Yale or Princeton right now. It's the class on happiness, and because there's just so much scientific literature around happiness now, and it says that if you're going to spend $5 on yourself or someone else for happiness purposes to make yourself better, spend the $5 on somebody else. Yeah. It is guaranteed, scientifically proven, it is going to make you happier to spend that $5 on somebody else.
Yeah.
Generally lean that way, right? You're going to have to spend money on yourself. You have to take care of yourself to make a living. So don't want to get in a stupid conversation over it. Of course you have to do that.
Yeah.
But after that's done, after you've met those base needs, lean towards being generous.
And it'll come back.
Always give a little extra. Especially if you're charging.
Yep.
Right. I'm with you guys on that one. If I'm charging $150 a session, they're going to get $175 to $200 worth of service every time, right?
Right.
And even then, if I feel like I didn't get enough work done, I might comp them a session, right? So I got a lady coming in tomorrow. I worked on her last Friday. Standard arm and shoulder issue. Ran the protocols, cleared it up, sent her on her way. She called me up yesterday and asked if she should be coming in again on Friday. Her arm still hurts. I'm like, whoa. I was pretty confident I cleared that shit up, right? So I said, because she didn't want to get hurt. I said, come on in, no charge. I go, let's look at it through fresh eyes. I won't hurt you, I promise. Right? So I'm not charging her, but she paid me once and got no results.
Yeah.
Right? We can go to the doctor for that.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah, right.
Right?
So
that's not what I'm in business for.
So I'm Nick. I own AKS. We do kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, MMA, and fitness. AffinityKickboxing.com is the website. James has a YouTube and a Instagram. He's the Feral Trainer.
Feral Trainer, check it out. Yeah. And
we're working on getting.
We're working on Shane. Shane's a little video shy. He wants. So,
I'm trying to keep it a big secret.
But he will be bringing you yoga and also the corrective exercise things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and we all do corrective work, right? So we all do the same work. Nick is the latest addition as far as the functional training, the functional work. We've been working on teaching him how to do manual therapy. And you're getting results. You've been working on people, right? And so, and then Shane, I don't know, how long have you been doing this now?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Shane already had a skill set. He was doing yoga and yoga therapy, and then I trained him in what I do. And so we all do the same work, and
together we're the FRS movement. So subscribe to that, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you guys.